The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Hello, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to creating conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Friday, April 11th, and I'm Mark Ross, retired managing partner of PwC and president of the City Club Board of Directors. What a pleasure it is to introduce today's forum to a sold-out room of 330 people, comprised of passionate citizens as well as business, nonprofit, and economic development leaders in Northeast Ohio. We all know that for decades, Cleveland and Cuyahoga County have struggled with a myriad of challenges and that have impeded economic empowerment and growth. Many, myself included, believe that one of our greatest obstacles is that Cuyahoga County is comprised of 59 separate municipalities, while our friends in Columbus work through this structural issue to allow for a much more streamlined, collaborative, and effective approach to economic development. At the same time, Cleveland's business, philanthropic, governmental, and civic leaders and organizations have invested mightily over the years in numerous initiatives to address our challenges. Yet, improved quality of the outcomes remain elusive to some of our most at-risk citizens, which only complicates our broader efforts toward economic, job, and population growth. The Urban Agenda, created earlier this year, is an unprecedented collective of leading organizations committed to working together to define, track, and enhance economic opportunities. Their agenda has a keen focus on poverty reduction, increasing average household incomes, and closing wealth gaps, just to name a few. These leaders of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, several of whom are our panelists today, are united behind a bold vision for systems-level change to bring about a more just, economically robust community for all citizens. Today, we will hear from a few of these individuals and understand the goals of the Urban Agenda and its potential for significant impact. Joining us today are Brian Hall, chairman of the President's Council, which is Northeast Ohio's African American Business Chamber of Commerce, Chris Ronayne, our Cuyahoga County executive, Baiju Shah, president and CEO of Greater Cleveland Partnership, and Sharon Sobel-Jordan, president and CEO of the United Way of Greater Cleveland. Moderating the conversation is Randy McShepard, chairman and co-founder of Policy Bridge. To set the stage, before we move to the panel discussion, we will first hear brief remarks from Randy, who will provide some important background and context on the Urban Agenda. If you have a question for our speakers, you can text it to 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the Q&A portion of the program. Members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me in welcoming our guests today, and over to you, Randy.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to see so many wonderful friends and Clevelanders in the house. Excuse me, my name is Randall McShepard, and I'm excited to be here today. And I'm going to drop this because it's in my way. That's fine. Thank you. I'm excited to be here today with this august panel on behalf of the Policy Bridge organization. For those of you who are unaware, Policy Bridge is a public policy think tank that was established 20 years ago with the mission of researching, analyzing, and responding to public policy from a minority perspective. Our 6 target areas over those 20 years have included education, economic development, workforce development, neighborhoods and housing, health and wellness, and social justice. So, why an urban agenda? We have researched these categories that I just mentioned over the last 20 years. And we have consistently found Cleveland at the top of too many egregious lists that track quality of life, including poverty rates, Black infant mortality rates, reading scores, and the digital divide, among many others. So when I'm asked why an urban agenda, my response as a lifelong Clevelander is that we are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Thank you. PolicyBridge acknowledges that many organizations, institutions, and governmental entities have tried myriad programs and initiatives to address issues related to poverty. However, we felt that the missing piece was a collective effort that brought all the players to the table to build a collaborative strategy where we could learn from each other and hold each other accountable. PolicyBridge released a report in 2021 titled Resetting the Table, an Urban Agenda for Cleveland, which listed potential areas that might be the focus of a collective urban agenda strategy. Areas of focus in the report range from economic opportunity, education, career launching, community mobilization, and many more areas. As we analyzed the critical needs of the urban agenda, it also became clear to us that we needed to incorporate systems change as a part of our strategy or process. We realized that merely creating new programs would not get us to our desired future. We thought it was time to take a hard look at the systemic policies and practices that have often presented barriers to Black and brown people seeking economic and social progress. With much excitement about what an urban agenda could mean for Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, PolicyBridge began hosting meetings in February of 2023 with leaders representing different sectors in their support, to seek their support and involvement in an urban agenda planning process. And for the last 2 years, those partners have walked with us, and for that we are grateful. Partner organizations to date, and there will be more coming, include the Mayor Bibb and his administration, City Council President Blaine Griffin and his council, our County Executive Chris Ronayne and his administration. The County Council President Pernell Jones started with us, and then when he stepped down, Dale Miller mightily stepped into the role with County Council. The Greater Cleveland Partnership, the Cleveland Foundation, the Gunn Foundation, United Way of Greater Cleveland, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, Cuyahoga Community College, Cleveland State University Levin School of Public Affairs and Education, Case Western Reserve University Center on Poverty and Community Development, the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, and PolicyBridge. Now, if this isn't worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what is. But after 2 years of planning, I'm happy to report that on January 31st of this year, we had a press conference event where each of the partners publicly signed an MOU committing to work together to move the urban agenda forward. If you could have been there, you would have seen the smiles and sheer joy that each of these leaders exhibited as they signed that MOU document. I do want to say we are using a collective impact model with PolicyBridge serving as the backbone for the entire effort to keep everything moving. We agreed early on that our primary objective will be economic mobility. That was a consensus priority. We believe that economic mobility, and we've studied this, is defined as a measure of an individual, family, or group improving economic status over time, usually in terms of income and wealth. And we have 3 primary goals that we are working to achieve through this effort. We want to increase median household income of Black and brown families. We want to create or close the Black, Hispanic, white wealth gap and reduce poverty among Black and brown families. And to do all of this, we have an operating structure, a wonderful PolicyBridge team. PolicyBridge staff, would you please stand and be recognized? Yes, the whole team, that's right. In addition to those wonderful people, we have established 3 working committees. So we have a shared measurement committee that will identify population level indicators and create a community dashboard. We have a systems change committee that's really engaged in looking at systems level policy change and advocating for the removal of barriers that impede progress. And we have a community engagement and outreach committee that solicits thoughts and perspectives and insights from diverse groups of people in sectors across Cuyahoga County. So, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. Today, April 11th, 2025, we are launching the Policy Bridge Urban Agenda Dashboard. We are very excited about this. We encourage all of you to visit pbua.net, and you can learn all about this. We want you to give us your input, your ideas, your suggestions, but this is a place that we will every year report on our progress towards our goals of the urban agenda to ensure that the community can see what the scorecard looks like, what our grades look like, and help us to improve when and where we need to. And then finally, before I move to the panel discussion, taking on an urban agenda for a city like Cleveland, as you can imagine, where do you even begin? There's so many issues, so many challenges. And based on that reality, we decided that we should really sink our teeth into a few areas, at least to start in 2025. So we decided that home ownership, business ownership, and workforce preparedness would be the focus of our work this year. We're coordinating several meetings, planning sessions to really sink our teeth into those three areas. And we think that there will be some exciting things that positively impact economic mobility as a result. So I thank you all for your attention. Sorry for talking so fast. I'm trying to make as much time as possible for this wonderful panel. So with that, I'm going to transition to our panel. And the mic stays on with me. Okay, I like that. It's magic. So we will start with our panel discussion. And my first question, I'd like to ask our county executive to kick off. Why is the urban agenda important to Cleveland and Cuyahoga County?
Well, thank you, Randy, and thanks to everybody at Policy Bridge, Table 15 over there. We appreciate the work you guys are doing. This could not be any more important than right now in our country, in our county. Thanks for the work you're doing. And the 330 plus people who are out here at the City Club today, thanks for showing up. You care about what we're talking about. As far as the why to Cuyahoga County, it's an honor to serve 1.2 million people across 59 communities of Cuyahoga County. Truth be told, it is a tale of two counties. It is a tale of two counties as it relates to income, as it relates to prosperity, as it relates to most every human indicator. We've all learned the hard way about the issues of social determinants of health, where you can be in a community, one community over, a neighborhood of Buckeye next to the city of Shaker, as an example. I'm looking at my old friend, Fred Collier, the former city planning director. He talked about that, the social determinants of health and how it affects community outcomes, right? To be in a community where you can be in one community in the city of East Cleveland, which is now the poorest city in the nation, and be in the same county where you can be seeing communities that are the wealthiest in the state of Ohio and the nation, there's something we've got to do. The issue of the honor of working for you in 59 communities, it is wonderful to work across this diverse community of people, but it's also an ambition that we bring together the communities and we address the inequities. And I think that's what the urban agenda is all about. Randy asked me to just give a couple of factoids about the county, but you know them. You know them by the heat maps that you've seen and all the demographic reports we've had. We are a community that suffers about 16% poverty in the county. That roughly equates to 200,000 people of our 1.2 million people. We live in a county where 20% of our county residents are food insecure. We live in a county where, as you look at poverty, that number goes up threefold for the African American community. 3 times as many persons in African American households are likely to be impoverished relative to their white counterparts and neighbors. That's about 2.5 times in the Latino community. So we have disparities. When it comes to home ownership, 70+% of our Caucasian community in Cuyahoga County owns a home. Just about 40% of our African American community. So I think this agenda for home ownership, for business ownership and development, and workforce preparedness, as it particularly relates to our urban core of our county, matters. That's why it matters to Cuyahoga County. I'm looking at my team, table 11 over there, the Cuyahoga County workforce that is also a bridge between communities. I thank you for the work you do every day. The health and human service function matters. But we are up against tough times. The state of Ohio's budget issues today, promulgated by the federal government today, means, let's just use one statistic. If there's any drop in the federal Medicaid provisions to us, there's a trigger mechanism in the state now, in the budget as currently proposed, where everybody that came on to Medicaid and the Medicaid expansion in 2014 would lose their Medicaid benefits. That's 96,000 people in Cuyahoga County instantly would lose health insurance. So we've got to lean in with the urban agenda to the state and its budget and to the federal government and its budget. I want to tell you on a percentage basis, the federal government actually represents over 60% of the funds flow to health and human services to Cuyahoga County's residents. The state government represents 20% of the funds flow. So 80% of our health and human service dollars that we depend on the state and the federal government. The budget right now isn't showing a glorious future for us. The county is only 9% of that through levies. And thank goodness for our philanthropic community, because that's the other 9%. We together represent only about 20% of the health and human service dollars. The county, through your gracious support of tax levies, and the foundation community. The other 80%, we are vulnerable to the state and to the nation. And these are vulnerable times, which is why this is so important. I want to end my opening remarks with the tale of two hopeful things. One, this morning, my county team and I opened a child wellness center leaning in on the problem of children being dropped off homeless at our government buildings. We are now creating a new front door on 114th and Lorain in the city of Cleveland. 58 beds with specialists, with schools on site in a campus that cares and heals. That's the generosity of this community that came together with $14 million to transform a new campus. And you can give it up to Nita, thank you. And we thank the state of Ohio, too. Thank you. Many partners in this room. And the last sign of hope I want to give you is just a meeting I had yesterday at 4:30, and it lasted till 6 o'clock last night. It's with the new East Cleveland Mayor, Sandra Morgan. We sat down and we built an operations task force that's going to lean in on budget issues in the city of East Cleveland, but she went well beyond with her vision. She went on with a vision like you want for your community and any community in this county. She went on for community development opportunities, taking the historic fabric of East Cleveland and turning it around as a turnaround place on the Euclid Health Line and doing great things ahead. Her aspiration is why I run for office, because that kind of citizen belief in what's possible makes us think that this urban agenda can work because we live in a county that cares. Leave you with those two positive anecdotes in an otherwise somewhat cloudy economic forecast.
Well done, Mr. Executive. We appreciate it. Yeah, give him a round of applause. Does anyone want to add to that, or shall I move on to the next? No burning? Okay, well, we'll move on to another question. I'm going to go to Sharon and ask, how can the urban agenda complement the work of your organization?
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I'm very excited about this opportunity to work with all these partners. We work together all the time, but I think getting aligned around what we're aiming for and really understanding that it is about how people get ahead financially, income, wealth, social capital, the poverty rate going down is really important. At United Way, we're on the front lines of this. We have United Way 211. We get about 220,000 calls a year last year, and those come from every zip code in the county. So the face of poverty is changing. We see the most growth in people who are working, often more than one job, but because of rising costs, their pay just isn't enough to cover it. So there are a lot of resources in this community. I think we all agree this is a very generous community. We have thousands of local resources that 211 connects people to every single day, but there are unmet needs, and most of those are for the people who are working, and but they're living paycheck to paycheck. So I feel like the urban agenda is really our chance to change that here for good.
Thank you. And Sharon is not only CEO of the Urban United Way, she's also a board member at Policy Bridge. So we thank you very much for your leadership in both places. Brian, how would you answer that question? How can the urban agenda complement the work of your organization, in this case, the President's Council?
Well, first of all, congratulations to all of you for putting this together. And I think about our community 29 years ago, the President's Council was founded just a little bit before Policy Bridge. And we're a unique organization in this community, as Policy Bridge is across the country. And when you think about what's happened over that period of time, there used to be an organization called the Greater Cleveland Roundtable, Cleveland Tomorrow, and the Growth Association. They came together and created the Commission on Economic Inclusion about 25 years ago. And eventually, those three organizations merged and became the Greater Cleveland Partnership, which Baiju leads. So I've spent a lot of time on the boards of all three of those organizations as co-chair of the Commission on Economic Inclusion, and then as a senior vice president at Greater Cleveland Partnership.
Are you saying you've seen this movie before? Is that
You know where I'm headed. You know where I'm headed. So yes, I've seen this movie a few times, and the compliment is that our civic system has the inertia and the energy to want to solve problems. And that's why these organizations continue to come up with ways to do that, and this is yet another. The challenge is, and your question is going to come up later, what's different this time? So I would say that, to Sharon's point, we've got to have measurements that we will hold to, number one. Number two, we've got to look at the problem where it lies and not look at the results of the problem. As we've learned, those of us who went through REI training, you can look at the fish or you can look at the water. And we need to look at the water and have a real commitment to fix the water. And so our organization will be a part of that. We're happy to play a part of that. And we're very hopeful that this time we make further progress.
Thank you. I would like to ask Baiju to weigh in on that. You haven't said anything yet. Please.
Sure. So first, thank you, Randy, for inviting us to be a part of this discussion from the Greater Cleveland Partnership's perspective. I think as Brian just shared, this is not something that's new on our agenda. It's been there for decades before myself, before Brian, before many of our board members are in the room. So let me maybe share some perspectives of one, why is this important from our perspective, and then what's going to make it different, I think, to your question or comment, Brian, in that. So it's important for our region because it's essential to the region's economic growth. I think both Chris and Sharon shared the human side of this, which is absolutely vital in terms of what it means for individuals in our community. I'll share the other side of it, which is the business side and the business growth. We can't grow to be a great region on a Great Lake if we don't have everyone participating. And that's why inclusive opportunity is one of our priorities, has been one of our priorities, will continue to be one of our priorities. Now, what's different this time, hopefully, is we do have a systems approach. Randy, in your remarks, you said we've been great in this community at showing care and concern, launching individual programs that all have had impact, but impact not at a scale that has been able to move the needle at the community level or what we care about in terms of the overall business growth level. What I see this time is we've got everyone aligned around not only the dashboard, but then the work that's going to be required to move those indicators on that dashboard. So maybe to just bring that down to the ground, I'll also share maybe something hopeful from earlier in the week. Some of you participated in our annual Construction, Utilities, and Building Equity Summit, or CUBE Summit as we called it, just 2 days ago, I think we held it. We had about 300 people in that room as well. And it's an example of systems change, right? Because we've all had programs for many decades on supporting minority contractors, getting into the business, trying to make connections on an ad hoc basis with project opportunities, whether it's in neighborhoods or in major projects in our community. And we've had a little bit of success in that. But what's happened over the last 2 years, in parallel to developing the urban agenda and this shared commitment, is more of a systems level of approach. And so I'll break it down in this way. So it starts with kind of an overall framing in terms of what the norms are. And I give a lot of credit to the city council president and the mayor for leading a conversation with a number of our private project owners and developers around setting up what was aspirations for community benefits into an ordinance and then into an MOU that sets sort of a new standard and a new norm for how large project developers in the city of Cleveland were going to be making sure they were creating opportunities for businesses as well as individuals there. That gets coupled then to programs that are put in place to develop specifically new contractors that are entering into the space. There's also workforce programs that we can talk about. This week we launched a Built Strong collaborative. We had 32 contractors that were looking to build their businesses, created a forum where those businesses could interact with project owners, so they found opportunities. The programs are more than just education. There's also a mentor-protege element to it. And so we have construction firms, Whiting Turner, I see Vanessa out there is one of those firms, that are willing to take these contractors underneath their wing and teach them the practical side of business, not just the theoretical side of business that you get in education. So it's connecting them into the opportunity, but to get them to scale into the opportunity, you need financial resources. And again, I'll give credit to the city. The city has put forward some resources from their ARPA funds that have been made available to address some of the barriers for businesses to just enter into contracts, whether that's bonding and insurance, key pieces of equipment and tooling. That's a piece of it, and it's all connected in at this point. That then gets tied into some of the work that we've been doing on our Minority Business Development Agency, where we're now looking for a pipeline of businesses that are looking to scale but might need access to additional, not only advice, but additional capital. And those are a different set of resources. That's the type of systems change that we can see through this agenda. And then finally, on the back end, it's working with project owners, public and private, to say, one way to help scale these businesses is to ensure rapid payments on projects. Right? That's something where instead of letting the small businesses be the working capital for large companies, it's like give them their pay in shorter time frames so that they've got the resources to scale. Now, that's sort of like a system that's starting to be built, needs to be optimized. We're not there yet, right? But it tries to bring sort of this idea to the ground of like, for a set of businesses, how do we help get more and more business owners to a point of scaling so they're creating the wealth and they're creating job opportunities in our community. And then it wraps around with policy at the local and at the state and the federal level that we support. Yeah.
Please.
I think I wanted to add that I think this is a really important point about systems change. And I feel like systems change has become one of those buzzwords that, what does it really mean? Everybody talks about it, everyone's doing systems change. But I think the thing that we all came together on was that we do have a lot of resources, but we don't need to start more programs. It's not about more programs. It's because it's not about fixing the people. It's about fixing us. And what you just described is a different way to organize us, the people who are the system, to make it work for people. And I think that's what's most exciting about this, and that's why United Way is here.
Beautifully said. Yes, give her a round of applause. Mr. Executive, you have been very generous with your time on this project and ensuring that good people like Sabrina Roberts keep us all on track. Can you share your view on, of all the areas that we could have focused on with this urban agenda? We could have talked about housing, we could have talked about health and wellness or whatever, but we chose economic mobility. Why, from your perspective, is that the right choice?
Well, one, we're tracking with you, and all you got to do is listen to people. When you run, you listen you hope it's a listening tour while you're campaigning. And what I heard over and over again is housing. So we brought forth our first inaugural housing director of Cuyahoga County, Sarah Parks Jackson, who's with us today. We started a housing department, right, to address real housing needs in the community. And thank you for the work you do. On the business development, we're tracking with you. It's what we heard, 30,000 small businesses in Cuyahoga County. It's the lifeblood of our actual economy, as Baiju could speak to as well. So we hired Vaughn Johnson as the head of small business development at Cuyahoga County. Government's not going to solve it all, but we can be a bridge to problems. In case of small business, looking out for black and brown businesses, is there adequate access to capital? Can we create seed grants and small loans that make a difference, the make or break between a business starting or not? And on workforce, the mayor and I worked together to merge a workforce development board. You were once a part of the two-headed monster that became one, and we think Greater Cleveland Works, its name, is going to work to teach to the jobs that need to be taught to today of what we have job needs for in this regional economy. So I think 3 for 3, bingo, Randy, you've got it. I think the housing, the business development, and the workforce readiness is going to lift the ships, and it's going to deal with the disparity that we've been in if we focus in target areas. So we're not afraid to say the urban agenda. In this national and state environment we're in, we're not afraid to say it. I do want to say I'm glad to have State Rep Juanita Brent out here today, and you may have some other colleagues in the audience, but I just noticed our state partners out here. Thank you for seeing us, because budgets are policy. And right now, we are watching the state budget closely. So I mentioned the 3 things that we're tracking well with you on. But I asked you, could this be an advocacy agenda for leaning in on state and federal budgets and policies, right? And you said yes, because I think we need to be heard out of this place that represents across 5 counties, 2 million people here, 20% of the state. We need to be heard. We need to be heard that when you take away the governor's proposed early child tax credit, that tax credit that goes to families with children 1 to 6, and was $1,000 in their pocket, and it got taken away in the House version of the budget, and that's not this House member's fault, but it got taken away. When you put all kinds of burdensome requirements on SNAP assistance, Stephanie House, Councilwoman House, you know this, in her neighborhood in Huff, we rely on basic building blocks to income that keeps families stable so they can go out and find a job, right? So we are also, on top of the 3 initiatives that you've identified as the target areas, we also want to take that and make that a platform for leaning in on state and federal policy that tracks with Metro America and where we need to be.
Fantastic. Well said. And since you brought up the great Stephanie House, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that going back to 2019, Stephanie sat down with Greg Brown and I to start imagining what an urban agenda could look like. So she's been our advisor since 2019 on this whole effort. So it's good to have her sitting up front. Thank you. Thank you, and finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my CEO, my mentor, Frank C. Sullivan from RPM International, who took some time to be here today, so thank you. I think one more question before we transition to Q&A, and I guess I'm going to ask it, direct the question to Sharon, and then I'm going to come back to Brian. But can you speak to any efforts that have been launched that might be specifically tied back to the urban agenda? Folks are getting antsy. They want to know, well, okay, this sounds good, but what are you guys doing?
Right.
And you're up to something, so please share that.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Well, at United Way, we have a lot of clarity about what we're working towards. And that really is Greater Cleveland being a place where it's possible for anyone to build their own financial security and fewer of us dependent on ongoing support just to get by. And so through this effort and sitting around the table with all these partners, but with the Cleveland Foundation, really found that where our strategies are going and where our work is going is so aligned that for the first time we're partnering together. And because a lot of what we've talked about here, to make systems change, you got to change the rules that are kind of holding the problem in place. So that's a lot often public policy. So we have come together and we have some really important and aligned ideas about how policy could change at the state level and some at the county to better align the support that we have with people's own economic mobility journey. Right now, it's unintentionally causing barriers. We talked about childcare is definitely one. That is one of the biggest barriers to working people. Housing costs, another one. So there are things that we can do, and we're starting with the state budget, and unfortunately, we agree the child tax credit is not there, but that's a good example of these are working people paying their taxes, and to get that money back would really make a difference for them, not only for where their kids are and the high quality childcare they could get, but also their ability to work and stay in the workforce. So we're very excited about it. We're just kicking it off. We're working right now at the state budget level, but you'll be hearing more about it, and we're going to need more people with us. But we think that we can approach it a little differently because even though there's a lot of things going on right now that may feel different from, different views, the one thing we are aligned on is that it's very important to get people into the workforce and keep them there. We want people to be financially independent. I think we all are working towards that, and so we're just staying focused there and staying the course. But that's what we're working on. Yeah.
Exciting. The President's Council isn't an official partner yet, but the work of the President's Council certainly ties in. I can read your future, Brian Hall.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
But certainly a lot of this work seems to tie in perfectly to the work of the President's Council. Do you see it that way?
I do, and even though we aren't a part of it yet, I do have to give compliments to you, the Urban League, and you, Biz, because the four of us have been working together for 2 years also.
Yes.
To work on the economic portion of what will be part of this urban agenda. I'd start with a fact, and this was from a Cleveland State study, that there were 24,800 or so Black-owned companies in Northeast Ohio. And of that 24,000, only 822 had a single employee, a W-2 employee. The rest of them are solopreneurs. And so when you think about economic mobility and business mobility, we've got to make sure that those companies can hire employees. And here's an interesting part of their study. It said that the solopreneurs' average income was about $52,000 a year. The companies that had W-2 employees averaged $1.2 million in revenue a year.
Wow.
And just to take that a little bit further, the solopreneurs were the lowest among Asian, Latinos, whites in terms of average revenue by a long shot. But once they had employees, they were almost equal across the board, at least Asian, Latino, and black businesses. So the President's Council, since almost our inception, and I should say, unlike most organizations, this was founded by a group of black businesses who put our capital on the table. We founded a for-profit entity and then a not-for-profit foundation. One of our former board members, when he was at BW, was sitting there. And we wanted to not just grow our businesses, but to grow other businesses. And with the help of this great philanthropic community, with corporate support, and with our dollars, we launched a program called Emerging Entrepreneurs. We graduated 167 businesses over a period of time, looking at one at a table right there, and I'm sure there's more in the room. But we were trying to buck the odds. It said 1 out of 10 small businesses make it, 9 out of 10 fail. And out of our 167, we had about a 90% success rate 10 years later. Excellent. So today, yes. Today that's evolved, because what we've found over the years, that's been decades ago, is that other people started similar cohort programs, but once the businesses graduated from those cohort programs, they had a job. They had something they needed to take care of. They either had to fix their HR system, their accounting system, their finance, they had to get capital. And so we decided to create something called the Business Solutions Suite, where because of the generosity, again, of our members and of this community, we are able to give a consultant to a business for 10 hours of consulting to help them execute on what they learned. And we believe putting that human resource in the business is helping take it to the next level. So we absolutely want to be a part of the urban agenda.
Outstanding. You're hired. You're hired. So I think we have reached the point that we need to begin the audience Q&A for our live stream and radio audience. I'm Randy McShepard, chairman and co-founder of Policy Bridge and moderator of today's conversation. Today we are talking about the Urban Agenda, which is a collective of leading organizations working together to address issues in Cleveland's most distressed neighborhoods. Joining me on stage are Brian Hall, chairman of the President's Council, Chris Ronayne, our county executive, Baiju Shah, president and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and Sharon Sobel-Jordan, president and CEO of the United Way of Greater Cleveland. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, as well as those joining via our live stream at cityclub.org or live radio broadcast at 89.7 Idea Stream Public Media. If you'd like to text a question for our speakers, please text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794. And City Club staff will try to work it into the program. May we have the first question, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Sidnor. Thank you so much for everybody that's on the panel. The one thing that I did not hear in this conversation today was a dollar amount that we think is going to take to actually move this forward. I've had the privilege as well of being involved in these conversations for probably the last 10 years, and we seem to get stuck at this point of having phenomenal plans without a funding mechanism committed to ensuring it happens. What do you think it's going to cost us to actually get this done?
That's a good question. I'd like to say I wish there were millions of dollars that would fall in my lap to process this. Are you talking in terms of what it would cost for a group like Policy Bridge to be the backbone to shepherd this, or the investments that all of the collective organizations need to make to see the numbers move in the right direction?
I think both, because we need a backbone organization that can own responsibility for ensuring that these working groups stay together and do the things that we're asking them to do. And then, like a Groundbreak Coalition in Minneapolis, they've committed $5 billion. They already have $1 billion that's been raised in order to reconstruct the way that we do small business, commercial real estate, and home ownership.
Yes, I would say to do this the right way, putting on my Policy Bridge chairman hat, we're somewhere, I'm looking at Greg's, $600,000 to $800,000 minimum per year to sort of staff up and have the researchers and the staff to kind of do this on and on. But over years, that adds up to be a pretty hefty number. I don't know, the question about economic impact is a good one, or the cost, but I could say we know from our research that if we did this the right way, the economic impact on Cuyahoga County will be $6.9 billion if we can close all these gaps that we've talked about. So that's one number that we are paying attention to, but I think Sharon wanted to add something.
I was just going to add that, I mean, it's a great question, and I think it's still unfolding for us, but I think that where we're starting is we're already investing, all of us, in the community. Can we better align what we're doing towards the same end and see if we can make more progress than we've made in the past? And then I think that would put us in a better position to attract other funding, particularly based on the data point you just made.
Sure, thank you.
And I'll just say, it to your point, is a 10-figure number that ends in a B to make the real change happen. But from the county's perspective, right now, we are in this tourniquet mode of putting a tourniquet on the bloodletting of budgets. You know, that Medicaid expansion that happened in 2014 benefited over 700,000 Ohio families, 100,000 of which are in Cuyahoga County. To instantly lose that in a trigger if the federal government downsizes Medicaid, which that's where we see things going, and then the state, which doesn't have to trigger a correlative cut, we need to keep everything we can right now. My first 3 months of this year going out with our consultants in Washington, Justin, was to just save anything that we got pledged to us last year. You all know that story, right? Capital dollars, operating dollars, anything was pledged to us. We've been pretty successful at that in saving it, because I think the rubber meets the road in these congressional districts where no matter the party, a congressperson has to meet their residents where they're at and say, well, I guess we do need that money here. You asked for it. So our mode right now has been save everything we can and lean in on budgets to preserve every institution that we have. And, you know, I'll just say it. When HUD gets cut and you have no HUD offices, when the Department of Education gets cut and you don't know where to go, all of this falls on the shoulders of the counties and the cities. And right now, budgeting isn't happening with community impact in mind at a federal and, dare I say, state level. So right now, we're just trying to save what we got to build back up to where we can go. But I think that number is $1 billion number.
Yeah, if I can, before, sorry, Brian.
Please, just a real quick comment, because I want to just answer the first part of that. And answer it in a way I think something is different. I mentioned that we've been working together for about 4 years, and we've been working on how do we attract federal dollars for the agenda that's important to organizations like the Urban League, the President's Council, Policy Bridge, Finance Farm League. When we got to a point, we finally said, let's work together towards the urban agenda. And so I think what's different for us in our community is that we decided to come together and support one of our own organizations to get the money to move this forward and to support that with the hope that we will all win at the end. But I said this to Evelyn last week. The definition of collaboration is when you can win, I can lose, and still be happy.
So I just want to answer maybe from a different perspective, Danielle. And so I've been kind of reflecting on the question, which is a great question. So I think about it in terms of also what's the opportunity that we're creating for businesses from the private sector. And if I go back again to just the CBO example, right, and I'm looking out and I'm seeing the team from Bedrock, I'm seeing the team from the Guardians, and the major developments that are underway and the commitments that they're signing up for in terms of the opportunities that they're going to create, not only for minority businesses, but for also Cleveland small businesses and women-owned businesses. Those are billions of dollars of opportunity that we are seeing in our region. The city last year issued, I think, a little over $3 billion in construction permits. It's up from about $1.5 billion, which is their annual level that they've been at. It's making sure that we're creating billions of dollars of private opportunity. It's not just about funding the kind of the infrastructure to connect the dots.
Thank you all for those. I think we have another question.
Yes, so happy to be here. A lot of times when I'm at the City Club, I call them conversations of comfort because we never really hone in on what's needed. So I have the missing piece for Randy to get his Nobel Peace Prize. And I want to ask the panel, what would you all think about a parallel community-based partnership where the barrier to entry for that would be the integrity. So from a community's perspective, when Randy mentioned the community being sick and tired of being sick and tired, we can all side-eye who the true leaders are. We can all side-eye fake agendas, and we know what you're about. So I would love to see, from an accountability factor, a community-based parallel of partners that would judge who's at the table for this work. Otherwise, Randy, we may not have a Nobel Peace Prize for you.
All right.
I know, right? So we have to work on this. But I want the panel to kind of answer that and really search your heart. Really search your heart before you answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to take it first because I have not been part of the planning process, but I have challenged my friend here, as I said, to make sure this is something different. And one of the differences is who's involved from the community. How do we make these plans work if we're not engaging the people we're trying to help and the geographies we're trying to help? So I agree with you. That sounds very interesting to have a parallel community leg to this urban agenda. And I know you're planning to have community input and engagement, but does it go further?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Ms. Hood, who just spoke up, is on the Community Engagement Committee. So you know we're going directly to the right kind of community leader to be a part of this process. And she always speaks truth, and we appreciate that, Ebony. I would also say, Greg would kill me if I didn't, that we kicked off our community process by holding small group meetings, focus group meetings with different subsets of communities. So we had the Young Latino Network, we had, who else do we have? The Third Space Action Lab, we had Neighborhood Connections, and we had Environmental Health Watch. And each of those groups went out and found community residents that came to the table, that looked at what we were trying to do with the urban agenda and gave us honest feedback and helped us to shape, well, you maybe need to do more of this, or don't forget about that. We will have many more. I personally said to the group, we're not gonna do the come out of the gate town hall meeting with 500 people. Too many of our residents have seen that movie 1,000 times, and then they wave goodbye and you never hear anything again. No, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna have small groups where people can be heard, where people have an opportunity to speak up, offer their perspectives, come back and do it again, perhaps join some of these community-based committees. But the point is well taken and understood. We really have to always keep the residents at the forefront, because they're facing all of the challenges and the grim statistics that I talked about. And if we're not asking them for help and guidance and input, we'd be remiss.
And if I might just add to Ebony's point, first of all, the dashboards end up in the digital netherworld unless anybody's really watching them. So I think our dashboard, if Table 15 got a little more work out of that question, so be it. But to have an engaged citizen group that's actually watching the dashboard with the framers, it means everything. And that's the other point I wanted to make, Randy, is average age up here, no disrespect, colleagues, but we're 50 plus. We've got to get young voices, younger people, including youth.
Please, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the information and presentation. I think it was well received. As I looked across the three sectors that you presented, the income inequality, the housing, and the employment, to me it seemed like there was a huge omission. And that is, all three of those are impacted significantly for urban and Black and brown folks by the justice system. How was that taken into account in your consideration?
Great point.
Well, let me be clear. The three buckets that I talked about, home ownership, business ownership, and workforce preparedness, are simply three areas that we wanted to get started with. That's not the end-all, be-all. I mean, issues affecting any urban community are quite complex. And we were also told by many of our leaders and advisors, don't boil the ocean, don't think you can do everything. And because our focus is economic mobility, we really felt those three drivers really impact one's ability to generate income and wealth, which is what we hope for. When we wrote the Policy Bridge report, we talked a lot about the fact that there are many factors that play into poverty and to quality of life that sort of attach themselves one way or another to someone's economic success. So you can't talk about jobs without talking about housing. You can't talk about housing without talking about transportation or safety or even returning citizens. I personally have met with several returning citizens that have initiatives trying to get young people involved in the trades. So I think one of the things we will be doing and looking at is how do we get job opportunities made available for that population in new and unique ways. I mean, every day we hear wonderful suggestions and ideas. We just haven't had a chance yet to roll all of them into this initiative. But we will get there, and this is a long-term proposition. We actually believe it may take the better part of 25 years to achieve all the things that we want to achieve, but we do want to see some success along the way in many of these different categories. Please.
I'll just add that one of the things that United Way is bringing to the mix here, we talked about social determinants of health, but we've done a lot of work, and there's a lot of research on social determinants of work. And there are 8 barriers that are evidence-based that stand in the way of people's success at work, both getting the job and keeping the job and moving up. And clearly access to justice and legal representation is definitely one. I do think that we'll bring this work to these conversations because how we move those population level metrics are going to be, that's where the rubber meets the road. And we've talked a lot about how we have to work differently. We've got a lot of information. We've shared a lot of data and information with you. But what it's going to come down to is what we do differently about it. And so, but that's definitely, in my view, in the mix when you're talking about financial independence, financial security, for sure.
I just want to say, I think the gentleman's point on justice is extremely well taken. The 3 areas that we are focusing on, I think on the upstream, is in its own way dealing with justice. When you help persons enter the home buyer's market and deal with that inequity of 40% in the black and brown communities in ownership and 70% in the white community, we're leaning in on better futures. We're leaning in when we're talking about job development and business ownership and against the grain of what Brian was talking about and getting more persons on payroll in black and brown owned businesses than just sole proprietorships, which we love our sole proprietorships too. But these all lean in against a downstream system of jail, right? I mean, all these. So I think in fairness to you and the Policy Bridge, you've in your own way addressed sort of the antecedents of justice system problems. Having said that, I'll just point out a couple things. My friend Stan Jackson, I saw on the way in, he's been very focused in his night job, not his day job as an attorney, but his night job, in what does the bench look like in Cuyahoga County? And to bring on one of the, I think in a generation, first African-American male judge in Judge Jeffrey Saffold last time out, good for you. Good for you to thinking about, does my bench look like my community? Is it correlative with our demographics in our community? And frankly, it hasn't been, right? So just right there, is there a community on the bench that knows their own community? And I think that's something we have to continue to think about. But on the jail system, I just want to say, I do not wake up every day wanting to build a jail in Cuyahoga County. It's an arduous task. My friend Laurel Domansky-Diaz is in and out of our justice system trying to understand how we can do better. It took me 1 week to walk through that county jail to say we need to do better, so I thank you taxpayers for giving us the opportunity to build a campus that heals and cares out in Garfield. And when we do that, we need to make sure that folks aren't just bouncing off 4 walls at night, that they're getting job training opportunities in the jail. We're working with Tri-C. Ronnie Cannon, where are you? You know this better than anybody. You've been through the system, and now you're at Towards Employment. And you know that we need to do job training for people who didn't have a first chance, let alone a second chance, right? And we got to work on what we're doing in the jail. So we're working with Tri-C on some school-based training in the jails. But what is so critically important is how somebody re-enters into a community. Do they have the tools to actually come back and matriculate in their communities? Do they have housing leads? Do they have transportation leads? Do they have a job skill development? LMM's working with us on culinary training in the jail so somebody can come out and go work through the Edwins program and re-enter a community. It really matters. Upstream, I think you got it with you 3, but I think the gentleman's right. The real sort of test of all this will be, how are we doing with our justice system? Is that number tonight where there's 1,500 persons in our custody at the county jail, in 10 years, in 5 years, in 1 year, can that number keep coming down and can come down substantially?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much to Brian Hall, County Executive Ronayne, Baiju Shah, Sharon Sobel-Jordan, and Randy McShepard for joining us at the City Club. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech at cityclub.org. The City Club would like to welcome guests at the tables hosted by AECOM, Birthing Beautiful Communities, CHN Housing Partners, Cuyahoga County, the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, Cuyahoga Land Bank, GCP, Huntington, the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, Macaulay and Company, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, Policy Bridge, Providence House, Rock Family of Companies, United Way of Greater Cleveland, YMCA of Greater Cleveland, and Youth Opportunities Unlimited. What a list. Next week at the City Club, we have an incredibly interesting left-to-right program pairing, as our role is to create conversations of consequence and to do so on a nonpartisan basis. On Monday, April 14th, Silicon Valley Congressman Ro Khanna will offer a vision for what he's calling economic patriotism and a way forward for the Democratic Party. Then on Thursday, April 17th, State Senate Finance Committee Chair Jerry Serino will talk about the state budget, Senate Bill 1, and other GOP priorities. I encourage you to come to both, regardless of your political ideology. You can get tickets to each of these forums and learn more about others at cityclub.org. And that brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you once again to our speakers. I'm Mark Ross, and this forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.